Introduce our panelists, some of them good friends of mine as well. The discussion is about the refugee crisis and rescue services, and I would like first to ask our dear friend and colleague from Turkey, Dr. Turhan Sofuoglu, to come on stage. Turhan has been a member of the EMS Scientific Advisory Board of the Turkish Ministry of Health, President of the Turkish Emergency Ambulance Physician Association, working in the field of pre-hospital and EMS since 1986. He was one of the establishers of the Turkish 112 EMS and a former head of the Izmir 112 EMS Department and Provincial Deputy Health Director, and also co-worker in exercises between Greek and Turkish ambulance services. Thank you, Turhan, for being here. Zeynep Sofuoglu is there as well, Dr. Zeynep Sofuoglu, again a member of the Turkish Emergency Ambulance Physician Association, working in pre-hospital EMS since 1994, and former deputy head of Izmir 112 ambulance service in Turkey. Next is Mr. Vaios Polychronidis. Mr. Polychronidis is a coordinator of the rescue and paramedic team in Lesbos, in Greece, for an NGO, a Greek NGO called crises. Head of First Aid Department, the Hellenic Rescue Team, another NGO in Greece working with the refugees, and has a long-standing experience with rescue operations, including in the context of the work of refugee crisis, and we'll hear about what NGO Praxis is doing. Finally, I'd like to invite Mr. Davide de Bernardin from MOA's Project Coordinator Migrants Offshore Aid Station Foundation. The Migrant Offshore Aid Station called MOAS, and that's how we're going to address it from now on. He's in charge of logistics and recruitment, as well as the rotation of staff and volunteers on board MOS vessels in the Aegean. You'll hear more about that. And he's also the point of contact for technical partners and universities. Let me switch from here to the panel. And somebody should press a button and we see the first video, please.
Time for Focus, and today we have a special report by a journalist who managed to convince smugglers to let him accompany a group of migrants making the perilous journey by boat from Turkey to Greece. The International Organization for Migration saying this Tuesday that in the last few days, 72 migrants at least are believed to have died on this very crossing. Franck Genozor from French TV station France 2 was with some 60 people from Syria and Iraq. In a moment, we'll be speaking to him about that experience. But first, here's his report, voiced by Clovis Casali.
It was difficult, but French journalist Franck Genozor managed to convince smugglers to let him embark on a dangerous trip.
We left maybe 10 minutes ago, and we've been going along the Turkish coast to an unknown destination where we'll probably be picking up dozens of migrants. Smugglers have warned us to hide here inside the boat so no one can spot us.
Somewhere along the coast, the boat stops. The captain tells the migrants it's safe for them to get on. His fellow smugglers escort dozens of Syrian and Iraqi refugees who had been hiding in bushes for the past 24 hours. Families with children are allowed to be the first to step on the boat. All are extremely nervous. Many can't swim. 20 terrified children wear life jackets much too big for them. The youngest passenger on board is a baby barely 2 months old. His parents will hold him tight throughout what will be an ordeal they'll never forget. The migrants help each other. Solidarity will be key on this journey. A Syrian man known as Ibra shares his excitement with the French journalist.
I feel so amazing. But family there. I don't if they came or they didn't come yet.
The smugglers order Ibra to get off and help push the boat. Others are told to join efforts or else they won't leave. One of the smugglers waves a gun to show who's in charge and who must obey. The boat can finally sail off, but without the captain. The smuggler will take no more risks. He randomly picks a migrant with no experience to replace him, and he jumps off. The smugglers congratulate each other. They're on land, and whatever happens to the migrants from now on is not their business. They have their money, their job is over. One Iraqi man struggles to reach the boat where his wife and children found a seat. Exhausted, he finally manages to get on. The journey can begin. The boat is heading to the Greek island of Lesbos, some 10 kilometers away. Many pray. They all know they're risking their lives. But no one on board feels safe.
I've told the captain to not go too fast. It's better to go slowly if it means arriving safely there.
The sea is beautiful, but the boat's engine doesn't work well.
60 people are crammed onto this old wooden boat. 2,000 euros per adult, 1,000 per child. That's what it cost them to be allowed on. The smoke coming out of the worn-out engine and the smell of petrol are unbearable. Night falls, making the journey even more dangerous. With no lights, the boat will have to navigate in the Aegean Sea, hoping to avoid cargo ships that could crush them anytime. Suddenly, the engine stops working. After a short prayer, the migrants look at each other in despair.
The engine has stopped. We're about 2 or 3 kilometers away from the Turkish coast. There's practically no light apart from the one on our camera, and there are no boats in sight. For the time being, we're stuck here.
The migrants have plunged into darkness with the only light coming from a few mobile phones. They blow the whistles on their life jackets in a desperate attempt to be noticed and saved.
Everyone, stop moving, or we're going to capsize.
The French journalist who carries a satellite phone calls rescue forces, giving the boat's GPS coordinates.
Tell him that I called. They're gonna come, but it takes time, okay?
A lot of people died here, so the people so scary about that.
Shortly after the call, a small Greek fishing boat approaches.
To come here, here.
Coast Guards gave the alert.
My friend, come to here. Come to here.
Due to increasingly strong waves, the Greek fisherman is struggling to tow the migrants' boat, but he finally manages to save the group.
You know why we go to there now? Because our governments kill us, but your governments take care about you.
The journey has been exhausting, traumatizing, and it's not quite over yet. After 4 hours at sea, the migrants finally arrive in Lesbos. The overwhelming feeling is one of relief.
The sea is scary. Thanks, always. Thank you. Thank you.
Ibra reunites with his family, who are on the other side of the boat.
Still a long way to go, right?
We still have a lot of so long drive to go to the Germany. But we do the hard to go to there, work hard to go to there.
Their perilous journey at sea is now over, but more difficulties lie ahead. The following day, it will be time to head towards Athens before travelling to Northern Europe by any possible means. Having fled their war-torn countries, they are now looking for a new place they can call home.
Joining me now from Jerusalem is the author of that report, France 2 journalist Franck Genozo. Hello, thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's Focus. Now, just how hard was it for you to convince smugglers to let you make that journey?
Well, actually, it was really easier than expected. When we showed up in this small Turkish port, we were told by the fishermen that there was this shop, like up the mountain, and when we got there, actually there was this guy with goggles watching the sea and especially watching the movements of the Turkish coast guards. So in the end we decided to talk to this guy. It took us about 1 hour. At the beginning he asked for money, obviously, as you can expect from him, but it was 1,000 euros for each journalist on the boat, and obviously we didn't want to feed the traffic, so we said no way. And in the end he started to tell us that he's kind of, fed up to see the media picturing them as criminals, that they also help people cross the sea and, make their dream come true, kind of. So in the end, we said that it was something we could tell, for example, in our story, and he decided that it was worth it to have us on his boat, actually.
What motivated you to make such a dangerous journey? I mean, what was your aim with this report?
Well, I do think that it's very important to show the exact reality of what's going on those boats. And it was really hard at the beginning to pick up a place to do it and to try, to identify a boat that could allow us to make it safely to the Greek coast. But I really think that it was worth it going with those migrants on this boat to realize how hard it can be to travel and what they are worth for the smugglers, which is almost nothing, as you could see in the report, because they gave us a boat with no engine in the end. But we prepared very well for this story. We brought with us a satellite phone. We brought with us a GPS tracker that would allow the France 2 newsroom in Paris to follow us every minute and to make sure that we were safe and people, with us the same.
But what went through your mind when the engine stopped? I mean, were you worried you wouldn't make it across alive?
Not really, because I knew that I had with me this GPS tracker and that Paris would be able to get in touch very quickly with the Greek coast guards. But what was hard was to convince those people on the boat that they had to wait quietly, because they started to panic, and we had to try to convince them not to, because it was very dangerous. And the only thing they had to do was to wait quietly for rescue to arrive. But since they are not used to travel on this kind of boat, they are not used to go on the sea. For most of them, they cannot swim. It was their first time on the sea, so it was very hard to tell them, just come down a little bit, wait for the rescue to arrive. And in the end, this fisherman showed up.
Have you heard from any of the migrants you travelled with since, and has making this report changed your mind at all on the crisis?
Well, it's very difficult to keep in touch with the migrants, because they have usually a local phone, a Syrian phone or an Iraqi phone, sometimes a Turkish phone. But when they make it to Europe, they buy a new one, they buy a new SIM card, so it's pretty hard to keep in touch with them. And on top of that, as you can imagine, the boat was not the place to get phone numbers. And at the end of this journey, obviously we got detained a few hours by the Greek police, because we entered illegally the EU territory. So it was very hard for us to follow the first steps of those migrants on the Greek soil, and we lost track records of most of them, except Ibrahim, that you saw in the report, and we're still in touch with this one. And for the moment, is still in Mytilene, which is the capital city of Lesbos, waiting for a boat to go to Athens and then to try to make it to Northern Europe.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Franck Genozo, thank you very much indeed for your time, and thank you for sharing your report with us.
Very interesting introduction to what we're about to discuss. And we got a lot of information out of that, but clearly we would like to concentrate on the rescue services of the refugee crisis, because there are so many aspects of that crisis. So I'll start by asking my Turkish colleagues, and whichever wants to respond, how emergency calls are made from boats by migrants and how these calls are handled. Is 112 used? Are there many such calls? What are the difficulties in handling those calls? I have heard personally that the refugees know the 112 number to be used. So what's your experiences? What are you hearing from your agencies that work closely there? We should... Microphone on? Okay, we'll use the... It might be on. Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, I will speak for Dr. Fazlina.
Okay.
Dr. Fazlina, he couldn't come to EENA. He is now refugees camp. I would like to explain, first of all, I would like to explain Turkish dispatching system. In the first model, old system, different numbers for each emergencies. For example, 112 ambulance, 155 police, 158 coast guard. And second model, a new project, 112 single number project. Only 15 cities started this organization. But 112 ambulance service number cost agency cost cities of number system. Refugees call 112 when they need help while they are in boats on the sea. If they speak in Turkish or English, it's no problem. But ambulance dispatch can usually communicate with them. But if they speak in Arabic, some problems, and then they arrange teleconference with Arabic translators, and sometimes this is long time. If they can have the caller location, they organize teleconference with Turkish Coast Guard 158 and refugee line. This is a new number 157. Usually people are in panic, and they communicate in Arabic, so the space centers face communication problems. Caller location often cannot be determined exactly on the sea. In such cases, dispatchers give information to the caller to send a message to the GSM operators. Then callers get the location info and can tell to dispatchers, or dispatchers ask them to send location info via WhatsApp. Some statistics, according to Turkish Coast Guard irregular migration statistics, 2015, totally 2,430 number of incident statistics. 2,430 1 year, 2015. And number of irregular migrants, 91,611, and 279 dead in the sea. Turkish ambulance services statistics. I can tell some numbers concerning one ambulance responded cases. Totally, 2015 year, totally 3,056 from 5 main cities, agency cost. Aydın, Balıkesir, Çanakkale, İzmir, and Muğla. 60% of cases happened in Izmir. Totally 1,810 cases, 112 number. 5 cities totally 3,056. Generally programs use communications, language problems, Arabic communication, and maintain communication due to broken lines. After first call, impossible to call back the caller. Callers want to reach Greek authorities. They cancel the call after learning it is Turkish 112. 112, Turkish language, and stop.
Thank you very much. I think it's important that we get the figures that you gave. We now have some numbers, concrete numbers of how things are handled from your side. I'd like to ask Vaios. Vaios, you clearly work for an NGO, so you don't have a knowledge of the 112 in Greece. But I wanted to ask you, what do you know from the side of an NGO, and also what is Praxis's focus regarding the refugees?
Well, actually, I do know about 112. I've been also patrolling with the Hellenic Coast Guard and German search and rescue ships.
Excellent.
Besides Praxis. The truth is they're calling 112 and then they are being diverted to the Greek 112 because they usually get the Turkish 112. They get the location, if they can send a pin with their WhatsApp, and then we have the coordinations. So a ship is sent to them to bring them back. So what Praxis is doing for the last 10 years, we have a polyclinic in Athens and Thessaloniki for migrants and refugees now. We have unaccompanied minor shelters in Athens, Patras, now Lesbos, Chios, Samos, Thessaloniki and Kos. We have accommodations for relocation programs and those seeking from asylum. And from December, January, we have the rescue team in Mytilene, Lesbos, which is in the front line, first reception, with rescuers, paramedics, and cultural mediators. And we're actually picking people up from the boats, sending them to Moria, the registration camp, now detention camp. We have presence in the port, working along with the Hellenic Coast Guard, because for the last month and a half, the boats did not arrive at the shore. The Hellenic Coast Guard and the Frontex is picking them up from inside the sea. So they're arriving inside the port, and Praxis is there to receive them, change clothes, distribution of NFIs, foods, and clothes if necessary.
Okay, I understand that Praxis has a special focus on children, and especially unattended minors.
Also, yes.
Do you have any specific information about that? Because that's a very important aspect that is underreported, that a lot of unattended children are involved in that.
Exactly. One of our jobs in the rescue team is do the monitoring and the screening for unaccompanied minors, which there are a lot. But then there's also the thing about who's unaccompanied. We have 17 years old girls who are minors, but they're mothers of 2 already. So there is an issue of what do we mean a minor, and what do they mean minor. Anyway, Praxis has, after those screening, is working closely with the Hellenic, the Greek government, sheltering people, those kids in Lesbos as a temporary shelter, which is about to become permanent now because of the number of people there. We usually used to have approximately around 15 kids in the shelter in Mytilene. We now have more than 50, more waiting. There are more than 300 kids in Moria detained because there is no more space for them to go. In Athens, the 2 shelters in Athens and 1 in Patras, there are more than 500 kids waiting to get relocated somewhere or the family reunification program, or staying in Greece, going to school and living their life there.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I hear Zeynep wanted to add something about children. Do you have more numbers about the situation about children, or do you have, what's your perspective from your side?
No, not the children line, but from our NGO, Emergency Ambulance Services, we started a project previous this refugee major illegal pressing. We didn't pursue that. From Greece, Greek colleagues from Child Protection Institute, we started a session project from our NGO, Southeast Safety Network Project, with Greek Child Protection Institute in Athens, with George Nikolaidis, and concerning protecting unaccompanied refugee minors and stop child trafficking. So we provided a network between Greek and Turkish authorities, police, passport police, Coast Guard, and ambulance services. We didn't expect this, but it happened before, and we will make we will provide a both language handbook, how to recognize unaccompanied minors and possible child trafficking. Because you know, DNA search takes 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's child trafficking during the whole crisis is also a very important aspect, and thank you for bringing that up, both of you. Now, we heard from one NGO being at the sea and helping. I'd like to ask David, how is your NGO involved in the rescue operations for boats that are the frontier between Greece and Turkey?
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting MOAS today. It's a real pleasure being here. MOAS has been around for just about 2 years now. We've been founded mid of April in 2014. In 2014-2015, we operated in the Central Mediterranean area off the coast of Libya. So we were working in cooperation with the Italian authorities and the Italian Coast Guard in particular. At the end of 2015, we decided, also after a direct request by the Greek government, to move one of our assets to the Aegean Sea. Also because at the same time, it was considered to be like the shoulder months for activity in the Central Mediterranean. So we moved at the end of December last year, and we started operating there at first off Lesbos ourselves, then we moved south. We currently are between the islands of Samos and Gatunisi. We have a 52 meters vessel, which is most probably one of the biggest assets in the Aegean at the moment. MOAS is a search and rescue organization, is an NGO. This means that we have some caveats and we have some specific, if you want to call them, pillars of our activity. The first one is known politics policy. We struggle in convincing people that search and rescue at sea and saving life at sea is something that should be totally separated from politics, and that human life is something that has no value in the street in meaning of term. Second thing is independence. And being an NGO, we don't have any obligation towards states or towards government. Our only obligation is towards our donors and our beneficiaries. And it's something that we always keep in mind. Another important thing is the team at sea and the team in the office running this effort. We realize that it takes a mixture of preparation, technical preparation experience, and also the willingness to go into an NGO and to something which is so not well regarded in many places. And so finding the right people to go there, it's not always easy. I'm very happy to mention here our volunteer program for rescue swimmers. We currently have on board, two at a time, rescue swimmers from different organizations from all over the world. And I'm very happy that in this number there are people from Coast Guards. We have people, rescue swimmers from the British Coast Guard. We have people, and we still have people from the Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service. We have people from the Spanish Coast Guard. This shows that there are professionals out there who understand perfectly what we are about. Another very, very important pillar is cooperation. We have to understand that nobody out there can do the work alone. It's not us, it's not the Coast Guard, no one can do this alone. The world was just not prepared for something like this. So there are different levels of operation that we can mention. There is a first level, which is the more technical coordination and cooperation with suppliers, with possible suppliers. And I'm very happy to say that I started finding any other option out there for testing new equipment, for testing new standards, which is better than ours at this moment. Another thing is cooperation with universities. Myself, I'm involved in cooperation with universities, and we go and have seminars also at these university courses. And particularly interesting is one we do with police and border guards from Frontex and from all over Europe and Eastern Europe. And this is very important because we help showing them there is another face of the issue. They're used to consider these early on security problems.
David, can we show the video at this point, and maybe we can continue immediately after that? Let's see the video illustrating MOAS contribution to rescue operations in the Mediterranean Sea.
Enough is enough. People are dying. You can't stop the will of people to seek a better life. It's going to always exist. We have done this as a family. We have shown you, world, that you don't have to be a government to go and help people. You don't have to be a navy to go and save lives. We know that we can continue to help people if we stay out in this boat.
Excellent, thank you. Was that boat deployed in the Italian Sea or in the Aegean Sea?
Yeah, that one was in the Central Med in the last 2 years. Currently is in Thailand for a new operation. We are about to start there.
Okay.
And while we have another boat currently in the Aegean, which is the Topless Responder.
Okay, thank you very much. So we heard NGO, we heard Coast Guard. There are other NGOs involved with the rescue and the boat rescue, correct? Vios, do you have... you said you participated as Praxis inside rescue boats, correct?
I participated as Vios with the Hellenic Coast Guard. They know
Okay.
me. I'm a member of the Hellenic Rescue Team,
Okay.
the head of the First Aid Department, so they know me. And so I've been on the Hellenic Coast Guard joint patrols and the German Search and Rescue boat from a German NGO, which is FRS.
Okay. To my Turkish colleagues, we spoke about 112 and calling 112 inside the sea. What about the problems of the refugees at land as they are? Are they also calling 112, and is it possible to assist them with, from what I understand, the biggest problem is the translation problem, is the language barrier, which is also a problem in Greece. But
You know, general problems are language problems from the colors. And secondly, maintaining communication due to broken lines in the sea. And after the first call, broken lines, and you cannot reach to the callers. Very big problem. Callers want to reach to Greek authorities. And when they dial 112, sometimes it's Turkish 112, sometimes Greek 112, and when they understand it's Turkish, they want to reach to the Greek. And communication interruptions due to open sea environment. And lack of color location or white area color location.
okay, Davide, as an NGO, you state very clearly your independence, but you also stated that you cooperate with Coast Guard. Do you cooperate with other NGOs as well, or just Coast Guard, or what's the situation now? Because you said you started from Lesbos and now you're in Samos and Agathonisi. There are other players. Is there a cooperation between you? Do you communicate? Sorry, I'll ask David. Sorry.
Yes, actually, there are currently a lot of players out there, and some have more responsibilities, some have more capacity, some other something less. But I have to say that it's amazing to see the kind of response that NGOs had. We are currently in that area because we both think that it's the best area for us to be, considering the kind of asset we have at our disposal. And also in coordination with the Hellenic Coast Guard. The Hellenic Coast Guard asked us to stay there, and we coordinate with them with everything that's involved rescue with them.
Excellent. Let me go back to a subject I feel very particular about, the children at sea. When you rescue them, are they immediately identified as unattended minors before they disembark, or that's something that happens after they disembark?
We don't do identification on board. Identification of people is something that law enforcement agency do. We are an NGO doing search and rescue, so we don't have Atlantic Coast Guard officers on board. and so we are not there for that reason. At the moment we go and disembark, people are taken care of by the Coast Guard and the Greek authorities, and they will do that part. Obviously, sometimes it's quite easy to understand when a kid is alone, and we have to notify this to the authorities and let them understand that there is this kind of problem. Many other times we understand that it's actually with the family. I have to say that this is real both in the Aegean and in the Central Med. In the Central Med it's even harder, and it's even more common to find unattended minors, because most of the families, African families, sending people out from their countries, they only have money to pay for one person at a time. And most of the time you have so young adults or even children sent alone. Because we also have to consider, as he was saying before, that there is a different idea of what a minor is. In a lot of communities in Africa, once you are 12, 13 years old, you're not a minor anymore. But for us, you are, and considering what these kids are going through. So.
Okay, Vaios, what's the situation with minors after they get out of the sea, and what Praxis is doing throughout to avoid minors getting into the child trafficking business?
Yes, exactly. What we do is do the screening as soon as they arrive. Sometimes when I was on board, or even the Hellenic Rescue, the Hellenic Coast Guard is doing some monitoring on board. When they arrive, we try to identify the minors. Sometimes it's easy because you can tell that he's very young. Sometimes not, because they're all dressed up like the same. And as I say, you see a mother of a kid of 2 years old, you don't consider she is a minor, but she is a minor. So as soon as we identify them, we notify the UNHCR staff.
Ah, okay.
Yes, we notify our staff in the unaccompanied minor section in Moria registration camp, and the authorities. Then our legal representatives of the unaccompanied minors program do whatever it takes to get them out of Moria. They go immediately to the first reception, not where all the rest go, to the first reception, which is a closed area, with Praxis teams, not the rescue team, but the unaccompanied minors team, inside 24/7, and then doing the rest of the operation needed for them to go to a shelter, to accommodation.
Okay, telecommunications-wise, and I'll ask Moaz, what type of equipment do you have in the boats that could assist you in the operation of the rescue? And would you ever use 112 to get information?
Well, there are quite a few instances actually in Greece where we are notified about a distress directly from the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard got to know because of the 112. Okay. There are other instances where there is a direct phone call to someone on land. We receive notification of this. We inform the Coast Guard because the Coast Guard has to be notified about this. And the Coast Guard usually says, okay, go on, just do the rescue yourself, and we proceed this way. This is very important, again, in terms of coordination between the different parties, that everybody is informed about what's happening. This is what happens in Greece, in the Central Med. I'm sorry, I know that it's another pattern, but it's important because there are a few differences. Because of the distances, you usually won't have a mobile line working at sea. Actually the smugglers, with a bit of extra charge on the ticket, they give the migrants a satellite phone. And they use the satellite phone to call some prey known numbers. Just mentioned this fact which happened a couple of days ago in Italy. It was in the middle of the night, and someone in Rome started receiving weird phone calls. And it was this group of people on this boat in distress in the middle of the sea. And they only knew that they had to call someone with 06, which is the prefix of Rome. And so they started doing random numbers, basically. And in the end, these old men just replied, and they didn't understand anything about what was happening, but he understood that someone had a problem. So called the police came, called back on that number, and they realized they couldn't understand the word in any case, but they realized they heard that the word sea. And they could hear the noise of the engine, they could hear the waves, and so they called the Coast Guard, which tracked back the call to the right position at sea. And so they managed and have the rescue.
Okay.
So this is what happens when you don't have a 112 number at your disposal.
That's an excellent story to finish at this stage, this session. I'd like to open the floor, and I would like to open the floor first to colleagues and participants who might be involved in rescue operations that we don't know about. So if you have been involved in rescue operation and you'd like to get the floor, now is the chance to speak. Otherwise, I will open the floor to questions to the panelists. It's a very, very pressing topic right now as we speak all over the Mediterranean. Tony, I'm sure there is a lady with a microphone that can come to Tony's rescue. He doesn't have to dial 112.
Thank you, Dimitri. And I guess firstly, for the panelists that are there, the work you're doing is fantastic. So for that, I suppose we're grateful for what you do. And it's quite harrowing watching the videos. So I guess the question for David maybe, and also for Fayez, in terms of you mentioned assets and technology and infrastructure that you have or you don't have. One of the questions I have is around, do you use drones? Is drone technology accessible to you? Would it be any help to you? And if it was, how would you integrate it into your processes all over? I guess weather obviously is a big issue, but perhaps drones might be one piece of technology that you currently use or could use in the future.
Thank you, very interesting question. Davide, you want to ask?
Yeah, actually we have been using drones in the last 2 years. We use them in the Central Med because the situation in Greece is totally different. Actually, as you know, the distances between the two coasts are so narrow that you can actually see from point to point. Or with the radar you can pick things. In the Central Med you have huge distances. So drones, very high-level drones, are very, very helpful in this kind of situation. The Phoenix has been modified, as you can see also in the video. You can see in the back there's a flight deck. And from there we fly drones which can cover quite a wide range for search and rescue purposes. I have to say that the Rome Rescue Coordination Center, which is the Coast Guard officers for coordinating rescues in that area, is very much aware about this capability. And because there are not many assets able to fly and do search and scouting around, they are very happy to have this asset at their disposal. With the number of military vessels we had last year around us, also flying drones in any case required some kind of coordination and the confliction with the military, because they were the only ones able to fly something else there. So in case they had to fly an helicopter, we had to notify them about our area of operation, otherwise we risk having some sort of issue.
Thank you very much. Fayez, do you use drones?
Whereas in Mytilene, drones are not allowed because of the military. Well, in Greece, all islands are considered military zones because of the problems we have with our friends in Turkey. So you cannot fly a drone. There was one attempt once, just flew it like 6 meters, 7 meters, and the police came right away, took it down. So you cannot fly drones, which would have been actually quite a big help, especially if we had night vision flying drones. But we only use night vision goggles and normal Google binoculars.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that was a very interesting session. I hate being between you and the solution of replenishing your glucose, your caffeine, and your nicotine levels. But before closing, apart from inviting you to the sandwich buffet lounge at the exhibition area, so you can do both things. You can both eat and speak with the people at the exhibition area. There are also 3 presentations at the Innovation Theatre, which is out at the exhibition area. So at 12:35, Motorola Solutions starts, about smart public safety communications. 1 o'clock, Heart-Safe Living, increased survival chances in case of sudden cardiac arrest with citizen responders. 13:35, Avaya, delivering the future today. And finally, there is 2:05 presentation from Falk. Telemedicine with video transmission from ambulances gives great advantages for the patient. I'd like also to invite everyone at 2 p.m. sharp to either this room or to the next room. Here in this room we have disaster and weather related emergencies, and the room next door is about next generation 112 testing at the track 2 room right outside the wall. What am I forgetting? What am I forgetting? Oh, okay, sorry. This room is going to be split in 2 rooms. Apologies, I thought it was the other room, but it couldn't be the other room because I have a rehearsal for tonight. So, apologies for that. So this is going to be divided into 2 rooms, and we'll have 1 session and the other session. Enough of me. Thank you very much for your participation. End of this session. Thank you.